R51.
R51 is an authorization for engagement of professional services with Pinoti Associates in the amount of $17,500 for structural assessment and call-outs. The contract is for 1 year, and upon mutual agreement by both parties can be renewed for 2 additional 1-year extensions if pricing remains the same as was a single bid.
All right, we'll turn it over to the administration.
Okay, Ms. Barracat will explain the bidding portions, and then we'll get into the technical aspects.
Thank you.
Good evening. So this was done as quote 2018-02 for emergency and standard engineering services. This is for as-needed services. It was done as a quote. It was sent to 3 vendors and 1 response was received.
Quick question.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Reed.
Thank you, Mr. President. So this one response was received, and it's the 17.5. Do we pay as they do the work, or do we just keep on retainer kind of thing?
We pay as needed as the contractor comes out.
Okay.
We pay for work that's performed, so we might use that. We might not even come close to using that.
That's what I want. Thank you.
Anybody else from council? Public.
Captain Traeger, Chief Board Supervisor St. Cloud. What work do they come out to do? I missed that part.
That's only if we need it, so just to
For what? What reason would we be calling them to come out for?
Okay. We'll have the
Yes, I heard
administration.
you. I'm sorry.
Basically, sir, this is on an emergency basis. If there was, say, a facade coming off the building.
Mike.
What city line used to do?
Not
do?
I'm sorry.
This engineering structural work.
There you go. That's correct. So we're looking at an emergency situation with a building, like a facade that would be falling off, or a roof issue. This is strictly for an emergency basis. They would give a structural
Not in
assessment.
case of a fire or something like that. In other words, they're not boarding up one.
No, it's totally separate. Sir.
Okay, all right.
This is not a board.
Okay, thank you.
They do it before. But they do it before.
Anybody else from the public?
How was this town hall, 2016 Simon Street, how was this handled before? In other words, this isn't the first time we need someone to, so how did the city handle before, and why can't they do it in-house? We have zoning, we have inspectors, this is 17,500 that can go toward Hartzell's issue. There's the first, there's the first donation.
Well, we just let that before, right?
Yes, we've had similar contracts for this before, so it's for work that's not handled in-house, and the contract expired, which is why we go out for quotes again once it expires.
Correct. But we could use that 17.5 for Mr. Hartzell's issues. Anybody else from the public? Seeing nobody, Mr. Hanlon.
Okay, on R51, Ms. Appa.
Yes.
Mr. Greedy.
Yes.
Mr. Hendricks.
Yes.
Mr. McLean.
Yes.
Ms. Moda.
Yes.
Mr. Robinson.
Yes.
Mr. Zuko.
Yes.
Mr. President, I have 7 yeas and 2 nays.
Thank you. R52, please.
R52 is an authorization for engagement of professional services with Myron Technology, Inc., in the amount of $1,556 for radiation monitoring badges for lead paint inspections. The service also includes analysis of the badges for radiation exposure and data maintenance of each user's exposure history, as well as a web-based report generation to meet supervisory requirements, and it was a single one.
Sounds kind of important.
Yes, this is federally mandated for worker protection. Due to the amount of it only being $1,500, it isn't subject to procurement requirements. This vendor has provided the service to us for the past several years effectively.
Thank you very much. Any questions from council? The public?
The way it's read, what service specifically are they doing? They're not testing for lead.
We use the XRF machine, which contains radioactive material to test for lead. These are the badges worn by the staff, which would indicate if they were exposed to too high a level of radiation. and then they would warrant medical treatment. So this is their detection system. If you've ever been to the hospital for an x-ray, they wear those little badges and they change color should they be exposed unnecessarily.
Oh, this is for those two badges. Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. On.
I'm just gonna repeat what I said before, they could add this on, and then you use the money to train someone in-house to operate the equipment, do the testing, similar to the issue we had with the noise, where the equipment wasn't checked, and they couldn't use it when the police were called out for noise programs because we didn't have anybody trained. We gotta get in-house and stop adding the profit to another company on everything we do. Let's do it in-house.
Nuclear radiation testing cannot be done in-house. It's a federal requirement for it to be done by a certified lab. That's what
I
this
understand
is.
about sending to the lab, but the idea that everything has to be on a consultant basis, I'm working for free.
Anybody else from the public? Seeing nobody, Mr. Hammond.
Mr. Greeley,
Yes.
Mr. Hendricks,
Yes.
Mr. McLean,
Absolutely.
Ms. Moda,
Yes.
Mr. Robinson,
Yes.
Mr. Zuko,
Yes.
Ms. Zappa.
Yes.
Thank you.
So yes.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Hammond, R53.
R53 is an authorization for engagement of professional services with Mountain Stone LLC in the amount of $16,840 for Cedar Beach Bridge masonry repairs. That was a single.
This was done as quote 2018-11 for masonry repairs to Cedar Beach Bridge. This was sent to 5 vendors with 1 response being received, which was Penn Mountain Stone.
Okay, they came in at 16.8. Is that about what we thought it would be?
Yeah, we estimated 17,000, so it was just under where we initially estimated it before we went out for quote.
Okay, thank you. Council,
Mr. President,
Mr. Robinson.
Ms. Taylor, just 2 quick questions. First is, which bridge in Cedar Beach is this for?
It's for the Little Stone Bridge near the Friends of Allentown Parks offices.
Okay, and then the second thing is, mainly because I just want to put a plug in for this, is if, I know your staff is looking into, if we would have a mason on staff, then this was obviously something we wouldn't need to use as another contract service, correct?
Yes. This
Okay.
size of this scope, yes.
Correct. And so I know you're looking at that, and I love that idea, so I'd just like to make a plug for it whenever possible. Thank you, Mr. President, thank you,
Well,
Ms. Taylor.
saying that, man, just, how many times do you use this type of service a year? I mean, hiring somebody to do once or twice may not be, financially sound, but if we're using one,
We have limited funds for projects such as this. We believe, and this is kind of a surprise to Brent, I haven't told him this yet, that this will be a proposal, but we have enough small-scale work with our stone walls and stone bridges that we could definitely keep this person very busy and accomplish quite a bit.
hires, I mean, enough that we should be able to hire somebody. So we're spending more than, let's say, $60,000 a year perhaps?
Again, I haven't put the numbers together, this is an idea that we're kind of fluttering to get as much.
Benefits, medical, and financial bills. Okay, probably we can do the math on that.
Oh, absolutely, yes, absolutely.
Thank you. Ms. Moda?
Yes, I would like to know, can you please tell us again where they're located? The company.
Oh, the company.
East Greenville, PA, which is, that is in the area of,
Pennsburg,
yeah.
Pennsburg Green Lane area.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Seeing nobody? Mr. Hammond?
Mr. Hendricks,
Yes.
Mr. McLean,
Yes.
Ms. Moda,
Yes.
Mr. Robinson,
Yes.
Mr. Zuko.
Yes.
Ms. Zappa.
Yes.
Mr. Greeley.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. R54.
R54 is an authorization for engagement of professional services with ZY Pyrotechnics for $11,000 for the 4th of July fireworks display at Bernie Grove.
This was done as quote 2018-07. This was sent to 4 vendors. We did receive 3 responses back. The lowest response received was for $10,000. However, they did not meet the specifications that were sent out, so they were disqualified from it. The next 2 vendors were both tied at $11,000 for the next 2 vendors. And so the vendor that was chosen was the vendor that we've done business with for the last 2 years. They put on the show for the past 2 years, satisfactory. And they, the other vendor had some unclear specifications in their response, so it was decided to go with the vendor who has done the show for us in the last 2 years.
Okay, thank you. Council? Seeing nobody? Public? Seeing nobody? Mr. Hammond?
Mr. McLean.
Yes.
Ms. Moda.
Yes.
Mr. Robinson.
Yes.
Mr. Zuko.
Yes.
Ms. Zappa.
Yes.
Mr.
Yes.
Mr. Hendricks.
Yes.
Ms. Simonides.
Thank you. R55, please.
R55 is authorization for a contract with Northwest Financial Group in the amount of $63,000 to assist the city with short-term and long-term debt financing and long-range financial planning. 1-year contract with 2 additional 1-year renewal terms. It was competitively bid, and there was 1 proposal.
This was done as an RFP 2018-01. The RFP was advertised on public purchase with advertisement being sent and accessed by 59 vendors. We received 1 response back. The evaluation committee consisted of 3 people, Brent Hartzell, Barb Wagenhurst, and Deb Bowman. The evaluation committee did a technical evaluation, a cost evaluation, and also did oral interviews with the proposed vendor, and the vendor was selected to provide the service.
Okay, any questions from council?
Yes.
Mr. Zuko?
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Garidi, isn't this sort of the same thing that the guy that's going to come in from the state going to do?
This is, it kind of has some similarity to it.
I'm just thinking we could save
But I'm not sure.
$62,000.
Yeah,
Yes, and
I'm not
workforce.
sure, the rationale, probably they can talk about it.
Mr. Hartzell, would you like to address that?
I am not sure what the gentleman from the Local Government Commission in Pennsylvania is going to have to be saying, but I do know this. The city needs a financial advisor on a regular basis to advise us on what we are going to do if we have to go into some long-term or short-term debt financing. I know the point has been raised a great deal about, well, we could do all this stuff in-house, and if I could clone myself, yes, I would be very happy to try to take on the role of getting all of the debt documents in the proper form and being able to do investing in cash and all those other things. We do what we do very well, and it is not a common thing. In fact, I haven't even heard about this in which a city would not utilize somebody with the expertise to deal with the debt markets, to deal with the investing community, to help with all of this. And we have been limited also, I suspect, by the fact that if anybody is working with the Neighborhood Improvement Zone Development Authority, we can't use them because there is that contractual divide that exists. This was what PFM was doing for the city. PFM did not apply for this. NW Financial had a very good meeting with us. They fell within what I was expecting, what we were going to be putting out for the budget on this. And I think that they're going to help provide in terms of the services that we so desperately need in terms of planning for longer term debt finance if we have to have it, along with some very good advice on our overall long-term financial plan. Yes, the person coming in from Harrisburg is going to provide some good advice, and I am looking forward to that, but we're needing somebody who can be that as our partner on a longer-term basis, and that is why we're going forward with this.
Saying that, thank you. Saying that, I wonder if we can we hold on this until we get the information from the gentleman that's coming from the state? I mean, it sounds like it would have been almost like putting the cart before the horse in this one. But you've been thinking about that for a long time and you just brought it over. I mean, you know what I mean? Go ahead.
When PFM decided not to continue working with us, and there was an obvious reason involving the other entity in the downtown area with respect to that, we needed to have somebody, as far as a regular partner goes, to be able to help us with our financial planning when it involves going into the debt markets, which I don't want to have to go down that road. But if that is something that we need to do, whoever's coming here from Harrisburg is going to provide us with some lovely advice, but they're not going to be the one that's going to be on our side when the time comes to actually have to go into the debt markets and work with investors on them. And it's a standard practice in other municipalities of this size to have somebody in that advisory role. And at this point, again, if I could clone myself, I would love to be able to try to do all these different things. But this is a very important advisory role on some very heavy technical issues to make sure that we get the best deal that we can on certain financial advice and on certain, if we have to go into the debt markets, how we go about doing it.
But sorry to interrupt you, Mr. Huff. Are we looking into going bond or something, looking into going to the debt market soon, or can we? I'm just saying, the gentleman is coming on the 2nd, so that's only 2 weeks from now.
We have already factored into this year's budget some short-term debt to be able to do with. Similarly, you recall that we just finished up the $6 million 3-year issue to deal with improvements to our fleet and to our IT systems. There are still some outstanding issues tied to that that we already factored into the budget for short-term financing for the coming year. Long-term financing we can't afford to do right now. We're already up at a point that is very high up in terms of our overall debt commitments, but in terms of doing short-term financing, we need to get something going on that very soon so that we can start making, it's not going to be as big an issue as it was the previous 3 years, but we still need to have something in place there to help us meet our fleet and IT needs in a timely manner.
Yeah, I see the difference between what the gentleman who's coming on the 2nd is going to say, but and that we need somebody perhaps to help us out, help us along when we go into the debt market. But my question is, can we postpone this, approving this until 2 weeks from now?
If that is the wishes of council, I've got no problem with it. We can talk about this in some detail before that point.
Because it's not going to come right away anyway. I mean,
no.
So, you know what I mean? I'm not saying we don't want it.
I understand the distinction. No, and if we want to wait on this for 2 weeks, that's up to you. I trust these folks very well, and we had budgeted for this purpose for the year. So however you want to handle it, we'll work with you on it.
Okay.
Just one question. We don't run into any kind of problem with the bid if we wait, do we?
Yeah. The bid is, it has language in there to hold for 60 days from the time they submitted, and then we can, upon mutual agreement, so we would just ask them to extend it for 30 days longer, or whatever time we feel we would need longer. So that wouldn't be an issue now.
So I would make a motion that we postpone it until after we get a presentation from Mr. Kelly.
Presentation on the 2nd.
On the 2nd, from Mr. Kelly, yes.
I second that motion.
Mr. President, actually, I have questions on the actual bill, and now we've moved into a motion on the bill, which is all we can now speak about. So is there a way we could...
Can we withdraw the motion until we get the questions done on the bill?
Sure.
Yeah, just because it's parliamentary, we just tied our hands.
Okay. So just not tied them, I think.
Thank you.
We'll withdraw it till after?
Yeah, you can speak on it.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you very much. Mr. Hartzell, just so that I can understand everything here. So first of all, just so we have some clarification on this, what we're talking about is the gentleman from the Local Government Commission who's coming in can give us some great advice on budgeting, on how we put everything together, on how we interact between council, the administration, everything to that effect. What we're talking about with this contract, however, is having someone to provide you and your staff with regular financial information pursuant to making any type of short-term or long-term debt acquisitions. Now, obviously, you said we're not in a position to do long-term, but is that a correct assessment of the difference between the two things that we're talking about?
What I have understood, Councilman Robinson, about what the gentleman from Harrisburg is coming in is along the lines you understand it, and there is that clear distinction between what we're looking for in the latter case.
Right, so it's two-
which you have explained clearly.
So two completely different things that we're talking about here. And the second thing that I have, because this is a very big concern for me. So when you're talking about the short-term debt, you said how that involves some of our fleet issues as well as IT. You're looking at doing more short-term debt concerning fleet issues. Would that include, even though we're getting grant funding for it, would that include anything with the new fire trucks?
We are getting 3 new fire trucks over the course of the next 2 years. One of them is being taken care of as a direct purchase as a result of the grant. But I suspect that part of what helped us earn that grant was that we had been making a commitment financially in the budget that this year and next year we were going to bring in 2 other fire trucks that we were working on lease purchasing for those particular items and paying those off over a 5-year period to be able to add them to our fleet and be able to retire some of the older ones. So getting that one grant was very good, and then we're going to get a new fire truck out of it, but there was still, I think, the implicit assumption from the state that we were going to bring on 2 more that we were going to pay for.
The reason I asked that question is because something that not a lot of people have realized, a direct result of President Trump's steel and aluminum tariffs, is the fact that the cost of fire trucks in the next few months is about to go up by about $50,000 a truck. And that's a significant increase when we're talking about 2 trucks. Now we're looking at an additional $100,000. So if delaying this could in any way delay our ability to try and purchase these trucks as quickly as humanly possible, I have a concern with that, and that's my question.
To be fair on that one, the original truck that we are going to purchase is getting locked into that price before the tariffs take effect. The other 2 that we're going to bring on probably would not come in
I just want to make sure.
afterwards. So, yeah, your point is well taken, but I think we will be dealing with the effects of the tariff on the latter, on the second and third engines.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Hartzell. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for your indulgence.
Sure. Anyway, I still make the motion to postpone this, approving this until after we get the gentleman from the Local Government Commission.
And we have a second by Ms. Moda.
Yes.
Do we do a common consent vote or just?
Yeah, common consent.
We do common consent?
No, I'll be voting no on this.
Okay, a motion to table this for.
I'm sorry, point of order. Before we vote, don't we need to allow for public comment?
Oh, yes, but we just making sure.
Okay, I just.
No, not yet, no. Are we done? We have all the comment from council? The public?
Thank you, Mr. Robinson. Save me all that walking for nothing. Mr. Former Mayor, I have a question.
Go ahead, Mr. Former Councilman. I heard that somewhere sometime before.
Page 3. City of Allentown requires a financial management consultant. Where do we find that? Where do we find that? In city law, or is that on page 3 near the bottom, it says the City of Allentown requires.
Page 3 on the bill.
Yeah.
Yes.
Where does it require it?
I think Mr. Hartzell explained that pretty thoroughly.
To me, I can't find where it requires. When you require something, there's got to be something in writing that requires it. I don't find nothing in writing.
Well, we require fire trucks, but there's nothing in writing that says that.
Usually we put it in an ordinance, and the ordinance passes.
Yeah.
This is not an ordinance.
This would be the same.
Okay. And since you guys are requiring a financial management firm, what's wrong with requiring an investment advisory committee to oversee what's happening? You know, we have a city law, but this is not a city law that requires a financial advisory committee. And years ago, Mr. Greedy would know, on that committee, we always had somebody that was investment advisor to help us with bond issues and oversaw investments, that everything was being done properly. I think council got to look into this investment advisory committee and get this committee moving to oversee these guys. We have no oversight.
Okay. Maybe I might be saying the same thing Mr. Hartzell was going to say, but I talked briefly with the mayor yesterday on the phone, and he informed me, I don't want to speak for the mayor, but he did inform me that they were putting together a financial advisory committee.
What is statutorily there, which would involve 1 member from my staff and 1 member of council along with 2 advisors, that has been stated in the statute for a very long time. I did speak with the mayor about that over the past week, and we both are of the mind, and I had said beforehand that that's a very good idea, and now the mayor is definitely interested in going down that road. So to whatever extent we can put that together as quickly as possible, I am all for it and will be as helpful as possible.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Mr. Councilman.
I'm back, Helen Hahn, 2016 East Highland Street. Thank you, Councilman Green, and thank you, Councilwoman Hoda, for putting this off. You know what bothers me? I know I haven't been here, so I'm out of it a little. But I don't understand this emergency again. Remember fall last year and the year before, emergencies, we had to do this right away, or something else was going to happen. And then the next council meeting, have to do this emergency. Why do these things always have to come out of the blue to be an emergency? Aren't they talked over, like this fact that now this, whatever, I'm sorry, I lost what he was saying, but I'm thanking you for waiting and getting more information. That's what we need. We need more information all the time before these things are settled, because we've heard this before and it has to be gone through. And thank you also, Courtney, for the questions you've been asking. Thanks, guys.
Mr. Hart.
I will say also, if the postponement is coming tonight, I want to bring up the gentleman from the Pottstown office for NW Financial to meet with you all as needed over the next couple of weeks if there are any concerns about this, because I think he will definitely demonstrate that he knows what he's doing and is looking out for our best interest, but I think it's a very reasonable concern that you're raising, and I would be very happy to get him in contact with each of you as needed.
If you can answer, you can come with a second.
Yes.
And in all fairness, not taking away from Mrs. Hahn, I didn't hear that there was any kind of emergency here. As a matter of fact, you were quite willing to wait till the second.
The word required does not necessitate that it means it's emergent.
Exactly, right. And I agree, we should have all the information. Mr. Hahn.
The question again triggered me was fire truck. We had a lot of discussion about fixing the trucks, getting new trucks, and the truck laid around at the Horvaths until the city got enough money to get it going, to get it here, to do all this stuff, and we're acting like that wasn't a big deal. That was one of the emergencies that we had when the fire truck had to be manipulated, gone through all the hoops to get the used fire truck or the demonstrator, whatever it was. I mean, these are the things I'm talking about on day-to-day basis that come up here. They talked about fleets. There's so much that we can save, and no one wants to start right now and telling all the department heads, come up with a 10% cut so we can keep the city on float.
Mr. Hahn, we're on bill number 55.
I know, but he's got to stop triggering me with all those, the 1.7, the lockbox, all the names, and he triggers the response.
Thank you. I think that's part of Mr. Hartzell's issues. We need to deal with, right?
Hi. Give me a moment here. Lou Shoup, 625 North 6th Street. Julio, I agree with you. We should table this since you've got this other fellow coming up here on the 2nd of May. But I have an extra idea. Is it possible to actually have a financial advisor on the city payroll? It's an idea that I kind of sort of came up with. Think about it. Thank you.
I was going to say this would probably be cheaper.
Yes, it would.
Thank you, sir.
Glenn Miller, 2726 Furnace Street. Just like to address this bill in terms of the different aspects that are mentioned and have been talked about. I'd like to just bring out, what are the levels of effort involved in each one of the different segments that we're talking about. Looking at the last one for long-range financial planning, how much of the $63,000 would potentially be allocated to financial planning, and then once we determine the effectiveness of the gentleman coming on May 2nd, how much would we knock off of that? In terms of the debt financing planning that's been talked about, then what level of effort could potentially be replaced by the Investment Advisory Committee, since that's being talked about as an alternative? And the other aspect of it that I've heard mentioned is the actual production and dealing with the debt documents as far as, the bond purchasing, the actual nuts and bolts of going through the process of purchasing the bonds, which may or may not be done in-house. And as an alternative to this one, how much of that actual bond document production is boilerplate? I've recently learned through a source that I hope is accurate that, in past history, a significant amount of the bond documents are just boilerplate that is kind of filled in the blank for the city or whatever government is using the documents. So what actual level of effort is involved in tailoring the bank documents that are provided to any municipality to our own use, and how much of that $63,000 would be done for that? So that would be the third part of it. Just whatever the answers come out to be in the future would be interesting to learn. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you very much, but.
I would say it's a lot more than what you think.
Yeah, there's a lot more to it. I was gonna say that. I wouldn't want to just fill in the blanks.
Okay.
And Mr. Hartzell, if I can, the gentleman who's coming from the state on the 2nd, we're not comparing apples and oranges here, but there might be two parallel paths that aren't really intersecting.
I like that explanation for it. I think that's a good one.
Thank you. Anybody else from the public? Seeing nobody, now we can move to the vote.
Okay, on the motion to table resolution 55. Ms. Moda?
Yes.
Mr. Robinson?
No.
Mr. Zuko?
Yes.
Mrs. Zappa?
Yes.
Mr. Grady?
Yes.
Mr. Hendricks?
Yes.
And Mr. McLean?
To May 2nd, yes.
After mid-September. After the guy before me.
All right, we made it to the end. Thank you. Adjournment of the contract meeting.